Raising teenagers. Teenagers, as many parents and teachers will say, are just a whole different world. And we can definitely understand why, if we understand what a teenager is. And we're going to delve more into understanding how do we raise teenagers in a way where the teenagers are receptive to us as parents, as educators, and we foster a positive relationship where there's a connection, where they are able to hear our requests, where they're able to hear our criticisms, our suggestions. And of course, we will learn what is the art of criticism. How do we criticize in order for our teenagers or these adolescents to actually listen to us? And a practical tip at the end. So teenagers are essentially going through a very challenging time as they're becoming adults. And oftentimes they don't even recognize themselves. They don't recognize their reactions, their new reactions. Now maybe they're more emotional. Now maybe they're more demanding. They are more sure of themselves in what they want or things that they want to try. And they may engage in defiant behaviors. And oftentimes they don't recognize themselves. And this is due to their transitional stage to adulthood. As they're transitioning from children to become adults, we may feel like they're difficult to raise. Not only are they defiant, but they're impulsive. And we wondered, they are, thinking, they can think, they are young adults, they should not act so mature. And we are just surprised at their very impulsive behaviors at times because we are just surprised or shocked in how can a young adult who you've tried so hard to raise and who had such good character traits all of a sudden turn out to act in such unrecognizable behaviors or the things that they say. Not only may they be loud, but they may also be more on the quiet side. They may not share things with us all of a sudden. Maybe they were more talkative and now they're not sharing things with us. They're barely talking, especially when we ask them how their day was. And they don't share themselves and they may be very reserved. So that's also something that they're going through as a teenager. Remember, we have to keep in mind that a teenager is going through a very difficult transitional time in their lives, and everybody has a different experience with that transitional stage. And just to recognize that this is their journey, this is their path, and maybe we haven't reacted that way as teenagers, as parents, as educators, but maybe we were more reserved and couldn't act out on these, on these behaviors, but now we're seeing it in our children and our students. And here I'm sharing with you rules of requesting, rules of criticism. So there are 8 rules that I want to share with you on how to criticize effectively, how to request something effectively from a teenager. And no matter where you're holding as a parent, it doesn't mean that you do all these 8 rules at once. These are all strong suggestions that just try to do it a little bit better. And of course, be patient with yourself, because one of the best tips I can give over is just like you're trying to become better, you have to be patient with yourself. You are becoming a different parent with each child. It's not a one size fits all. One parenting strategy does not fit all children, all adolescents, all students. It just doesn't. Each one is unique. So the 8 rules of criticism are, number 1, keep your calm. Many times we get emotional in parenting and we take ourselves so incredibly seriously and take what they're doing so incredibly personally. And we may ask them, how can you disrespect me this way? And we will act defiant or defensive because we're taken for granted for our efforts and all that we do. So the most important thing is to keep calm and not to take what they're doing personally, which really try not to. Why? Because they're going through a very difficult time in their life, and they're trying to process life. And now they're a young adult. They're expected to behave a certain way, be a certain way, and behave a certain way, and take upon a new self. They're more independent. They're more responsible. They're expected to do more, but yet they may not exactly be ready, especially at the same pace as their friends, as their siblings. So the first thing is to keep your calm. Keep your calm and not to take whatever they're doing so personally. Number 2 is choose the proper time. We know the saying, timing is everything. You could ask the same person a certain request, give a certain request, but if it's the wrong time, if they're in a bad mood, then that's not really the time to request. They usually have, as teenagers, very busy schedules. And yes, being with their friends is also busy, right? They're busy, and if they're not busy physically, they're busy mentally. They're trying to figure out life. Their mind is always racing, or usually racing. There's a lot of demands on them at school. There's enhanced peer pressure regarding grades, performance, how they look, and experiences. Timing is everything. Timing is everything. And trying to approach them when they're in a good mood, or schedule a time when you want to discuss something. Try to tell them, maybe tonight I would really love to ask for your advice, about something. Teenagers love to be asked for advice, because in this way, we're actually acknowledging what they're saying. We're giving them a chance to give over any suggestions and letting them know that they're important, what they think is important. In this way, the discussion will be more attentive. Okay, number 3 is, which really very, very important in all aspects, is to be very respectful. And it's hard to be respectful to teenagers oftentimes when they're being disrespectful. So we want to try hard to be respectful even when they're being disrespectful. In other words, you're not trying to be stepped on as a parent and taken advantage of. You're not trying to ignore their disrespect. You give your recognition of how they're acting. And of course, there's a consequence. The disrespect should not be tolerated. There's different levels of disrespect. There's maybe it's a misbehavior, or it's, something, a lot of things are taken into account. But the goal is not to continue to be respectful towards them, treat them as a young adult. And when we treat them with respect, despite how they're acting, they're going to treat us with respect as parents and as educators. Even if a teacher is acting disrespectful, it does not mean that the disrespect is overlooked, but the parent is calm and in control, right? If a parent isn't calm and in control, then the teenager wins. The adolescents are like, okay, I got them. They're not trying most of the time to hurt the parent emotionally or try to get them all riled up. But if I'm going to be a stable force as a parent, I need to be able to be the one that my teenager leans on, not vice versa. If a parent is overwhelmed, stressed, most likely they will react in a less controllable way where they're not calm. And it's for us to constantly be in check with ourselves as parents, that maybe now is not the right time for me to talk to my son or daughter. And really try to be balanced and to regulate oneself, that right now is just not the time. And of course, we learn about our mistakes. When we had times that we were out of control, and no parent is perfect, we learn that this is, I should try this better. Maybe I should eat first or rest first before we have this conversation. Or maybe I should meditate. There's different types of practices. You know yourself, and you know what works for you. So we want to try to be calm when we react to them, to be respectful. And especially even though they're going through a roller coaster of emotions and they're being disrespectful, a parent can still be respectful and say something like, your language is not tolerated. Let me know when is a good time to talk to you when you're calmer. So in other words, the parent lays down the line that this is not the right time to talk, that the conversation will not continue in this way, and hopefully they'll be able to get a chance to speak later. Parent acknowledges that, listen, what you're saying is important, the situation is important, I understand what you're going through, let's discuss this when we're both ready to communicate. Rule number 4 is start on a positive note. Notice something that your child or your adolescent did something or said something positive. For example, thank you for bringing the things to the basement, even though I know you were tired. Or starting on a positive note, you can always say the child's name in a sweet way, or just say sweetie. When we say sweetie or something pleasant, we're already letting the child know, or the adolescent know, that you are being receptive, you want to speak to them, you're acknowledging them. And in this way, the adolescent will want to hear what you have to say when they're being looked at with loving eyes, with a happy perspective and positivity. Rule number 5 is give waiting time. We should refrain as parents from saying right now. When a parent says, come here right now, clean this mess up right now, already the right now is a negative term, because it's like the parent, you could hear in the parent's voice that they're perhaps stressed, they're maybe just overwhelmed, and they want something done right now, and that's fine. But refrain from time limits, or come here right now and give me the car keys if the adolescent is driving already. Or we don't want to set certain time limits or say it in a way where it's, stressful, straining on time. Instead, we can say, I need it pretty urgently. If you can please let me know as soon as possible. So that you're letting the child know, the adolescent know of the urgency. At the same time, you value their opinion, and at the same time, you're being respectful, right? So rule number 6 is one request at a time. Bombarding anybody with too much information, changes, requests, or criticisms is pretty overwhelming. Teenagers especially are prone to react negatively and respond carelessly if they're given too much information, too much demands, too many requests. Teenagers are to be given even more positive interactions than children before given a criticism. In other words, some educators say that after every 8 positive interactions, there could be 1 negative, such as a criticism or a suggestion. And yes, this is hard and this is unusual, but we shouldn't be used to the normal where a parent can just demand and be disrespectful just because they're the parents. And hopefully we'll touch more upon that later. But teenagers are on a ratio of 9-1. Every 9 positive interactions, there's 1 criticism or demand or request. So we have to be very careful, try to be more careful with saying 1 request at a time, because they do feel overwhelmed, and also it will hurt their self-esteem most likely, that I'm doing everything wrong, and my parents just gave me 10 suggestions and I feel like I'm doing nothing right, and it's hard. So a positive interaction could be saying sweetie, or smiling, or hugging, or noticing something good that they did. So every 9 should be really 1, which is really, really should be limited, right? We don't like to be criticized, and almost nobody in our generation is skilled in giving criticism. This is what our sages say. So it's very hard. So let's work on becoming better at requesting for 1 thing at a time. Okay, rule number 7 is explain the necessity of the request. As children grow up, when they're small, we're used to saying do this and do that and get this done, and mommy said do this and daddy said do that, and we don't have to really explain ourselves, because the child needs to understand authority, respect, and doing what they're asked, especially from their parents, from their caregivers, because obviously they know best. But then when the teenagers grow up, they become very smart, right? They have a mind of their own, and they question things, and they ask why and how. But when we explain things to them, first of all, we're making them become part of our life in a way where if something is urgent and important, we're letting them know. And we can't think or give them or believe that they just know what we want and how we want it, and that it's important. Like, such as a parent coming home and expecting a child to do X, Y, and Z, thinking, of course I'm tired coming home from work. Of course I would like that to get done. If you need something, say it. They don't know until you say it. So at a small age, children may not understand the reasoning behind a request. So explaining shows that you're also giving the adolescent an opportunity for a suggestion and to be able to connect to you on an emotional level. One parent shared with me that when she dresses a certain way, she wants to be as modest as possible. So she asks her teenage daughter, how do I look? And the teenage daughter just has such amazing insights and suggestions, and she really does value her daughter's opinion. And this gives, that connection, that emotional bond on a deeper level between the two of them. And the last rule number 8, is express genuine gratitude. Now, we know when someone thanks us, and thanks or just really appreciating what we're doing. Gratitude shows that they are being recognized. Many teenagers may feel that since they are almost completely an independent young adult, that they're expected to do certain things, that they should know better, right? They had experience as a child. They should know better. They had many mistakes. Or these expectations make them feel instead unappreciated and often ignored. Maybe this explains how teenagers do really crazy things sometimes to get the parents' attention, because they want to be recognized. So they should be recognized for the things that they do, even if they're simple, even if they're expected to be thanked. You do things all the time as a parent, and you would love to be appreciated even for the simple things that you do on a daily basis. Emotional attention is encouragement, recognition, and it's gratitude. So teenagers also need that kind of attention. Maybe it's not physical anymore, but it's emotional. So we want to give that encouragement, the recognition, and the gratitude. No matter where we are in parenting, where we're holding, there's always more room for improvement for each of us. And a practical tip I want to leave with you is an adolescent child usually will not take criticism lightly, especially since they're going through becoming a more independent human being. And a very good tip is, before you want to tell them something that's very important or something that's very critical, take them out for coffee, buy them an ice cream, walk around the neighborhood, or buy them something from the supermarket that you're going shopping anyway, and you know they love this treat anyway. You're probably going to buy it for them anyway. But give it to them and say, I was really thinking about you when I bought this, and I hope you really enjoy it. Soften them up a little bit. And we know that we live with our families, and you could live in a home or you could live in a house, right? You could have many houses, many lounging areas, but a home is the one of love and connection, where you're not living in a hotel where one is here, one is there. You occasionally meet each other in the hallway. You're really connecting, and it's hard to see each other as the children grow up, and to make that time as often as possible is truly, truly important. And it's definitely easier for this teenager to be able to hear criticism when they're in a better mood. And I hope these ideas were helpful. They're my own insights, but the rules are taken from the book by Rab Chaim Morgenstern in the Do's and Don'ts of Staying Happily Married. Leah Abramov, Being and Becoming. Awakening awareness of your greatness and potential.